All right. This is good morning again. This is our newest release, Molly Overcame. It's about a chicken. We have lots of chickens here on the farm here in Western Maryland, and like it or not, the chickens have challenges. Uh, I knew a girl and she was, I guess, in the reincarnation or something. And basically, she said if she came back, she wouldn't want to come back as a chicken because from the time you're here to the time you leave, somebody's trying to eat you. And I thought that was kind of humorous, but now I've come to, after owning chickens for several, 15, 20 years now, I've come to realize, yeah, there's lots of predators out there, and people like chicken and they like eggs, and so yeah. But I don't believe in reincarnation. I mean, I believe you're gonna live again and eternally, but no, not coming back here. Anyway, but this book is about one of our chickens that basically had, a challenge. And, you get peeps, they come in the springtime, and you get them in a box. And they deliver them by the United States Postal Service, and they're alive when they get here. And and we call them peeps because they're just peep, 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 peep all over, when you can hear them. Our mail room is, kind of an interesting place when people are ordering peeps and stuff. But yeah, one of along the way, you encounter all types of uh, disabilities with chickens. I mean, maybe one has an eye problem or some other issue or whatever. With this particular hen, we named her Molly, and we went out one day, and well, she had had an accident. So this book is going to kind of go through some of that, and hopefully you, your family, or someone you know may find this book to be beneficial. That's our little origami bird flyaway, and since this is a bird book, I just thought that was a good way to introduce it. But yeah, uh, in addition to Molly, there's a lot of bird symbology, if you will, and we're going to cover a lot of that through this. But what you'll see on each page is a depiction of a type of bird. And as I recall, I believe in the beginning, the first bird is a robin. And everybody knows robins. If you see a robin, orange robin, breasted robin, they're a harbinger, if you will, of spring. Spring is just around the corner when robins show up. They're usually one of the first ones to arrive in our yard, and along with the cardinals and whatnot, to begin their nest building activities. And that's always a wonderful experience for me to see them flying about with pieces of, I don't know where they find things, straw and pieces of string and whatnot, and they weave these unique nests. And we got a book we're writing also. It's the Jemima joke, follow through after I am Mem. It's called Nest, and we're going to cover a lot of aspects of that. The different birds and the different types of nest. But this particular book just wants to focus on birds, and the study of birds is ornithology, I believe, is how it's pronounced. Is used to be, it was just like go out and bird watch and draw some pictures of birds, but now it's evolved, I guess, if you will, into bird society and how birds interact. And penguins, they put together huge colonies and nesting and whatnot. And and then migration patterns, where birds go, when the seasons changes around here, blackbirds they'll flock up and they'll just be the trees will be full of them. But in the spring, y'all know about Greg. Talk about Greg a lot, but he gets me up. He makes me go open the door and let him out like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And during spring, when I open the door, it's like a symphony out there. I mean, there are literally thousands of birds in the area that surrounds the property here, and hopefully maybe next spring I'll set up a camera and attempt to record that and play it for you. But it's just they're talking. They got a language they understand, and they're talking and they're communicating, and it's a wonderful thing. But anyway, um, if you ever have an opportunity to experience something such as that, I, you should take advantage of it. Now, I know you got to get up early in the morning because, usually by the time 7, 8 o'clock comes around, that's just back to normal bird discussions or whatever, chirping and stuff. So, anyway, without any further delay, there are educational aspects to this book, in addition to the concepts of disability and overcoming and challenges of that type nature. And some of the, educational aspects are, well, like I mentioned earlier, you start out as an egg and, you become a peep and then you become a fledgling and then you're young and then you're an adult. And, this book kind of takes you through all the different phases. One of the aspects of the book is, we have a prayer, and what we'll do is we'll probably just put that in the comments down below or something, and you can see it. But on our brooder, there's a prayer, and one of the aspects of that is a little drawing that our grandchildren drew on there. And I just think it's wonderful that we pray over our animals and, for God's protection. But yeah, things have a tendency to happen sometimes, and that's what happened to Molly. But in the first scene, you'll see the postman there. He's delivering eggs, and like I mentioned before, the robin is an indicator of spring, and spring is usually associated for most people with new beginnings, and so these peeps all show up. That's Little E, our grown-up version of Little E. She's 10 or 12, and she's putting the peeps, she's got them, she's taking them to the barn, she's going to put them in the brooder. You need a brooder to raise peeps in to get them along so that they don't stray off and get lost. Or, I mean, sometimes on the farm, what'll happen is a hen will go what they call broody, and she'll set on the eggs and she'll hatch them out. Now, another way you could do that is you could buy an incubator and get some fertilized eggs. You'd have to have ones that have been fertilized. Buy a rooster, kind of thing. I assume it could be scientifically done somehow, but it's you get better results with the natural process. And so you can put them in an incubator, and that could be a fun science project, in addition to, for all you homeschoolers out there, something you may want to do. But, incubators are relatively inexpensive, and if you got a farmer or somebody who has roosters and hens, you just gather some day eggs that are fresh, that are still warm. Once eggs get cold, there's not much life. There's not much hope that anything's going to happen with those eggs. But yeah, and you can hatch them out. It's a great scientific experiment to do, and it's a wonderful experience if you're trying to teach, how does life get here, kind of thing. Chickens are a good project. But barn swallows, they're symbolic. They have a symbol of good luck and safe travels, and so these peeps all arrive. Very rarely we had peeps arrive in bad condition. They usually have enough yolk available from when they hatch to last a couple of days. But sometimes they're thirsty. Water is like important. So usually when the peeps show up, we first thing we do is we mix up electrolyte water for them to have, and they take right to it. They're thirsty, and it's interesting, because we bought our first experience with the chickens. We bought 30 straight run. Straight run means you're gonna get half male, half female. It's gonna be what it is. And you know what? They grew up to be chickens. They didn't have any mama or daddy or any, kind of thing as an example of what to do or how to behave or whatever. Now, all of the peeps we bought since then, they were chickens already here, so they got to learn the ropes, I guess, a little bit that way. But, they come, if you, for lack of a better word, pre-programmed to behave like chickens, and that's basically what people do too. They come pre-programmed to behave like humans, and all the good things about humanity are usually taught, and all of the bad things are just what our nature is. And so, I know it's hard to believe, but just put two kids with a bowl of M&Ms there and give one more than the other, and you'll quickly see the human nature. But anyway, so the barn swallows is symbolic of that. So we got barn swallows in the picture there, and then um, you know, getting from the factory hatchery, if you will, to here is quite the experience. I mean, you're there nice and hatched out, and next thing you know, you're in a box, and next thing you know, you're in a truck or a plane or whatever, and you're being sent all over, and then you're next thing you know, you're at somebody's house, and you're some kid or somebody, adult or whatever, is putting you in a brooder. And so we put the white-breasted nuthatch in there because it's an example of adaptability and resilience. But from what I can tell, most of the peeps that we get, they're curious and excited, and unless something's happened, they're pretty active. They're running about, scurrying all around, and all that kind of stuff. And as they grow, you want to be able to relocate them around. They get bigger. And so this is a kind of a chicken tractor, if you will, is what this is called, where you put chickens in a tractor and then you take them out in the field, and you just kind of the bottom has an opening, and then they can eat bugs and grass and all the things that chickens love to eat, and whatnot. And you can just move it from one location to the next, which is kind of a neat thing. It gets rid of parasites in the soil because they're very thorough, chickens are, and it also provides nutrient. Chicken generated nutrient, I think is what I refer to it as. But so the book has some educational aspects to it that are worth sharing. If, like I say, if you're in a homeschool environment or just in general, you don't you might want to brush up on some of this stuff before or watch this presentation before you read the book to them. And that way you can talk to your children. In the front of the book, there's a index page that says, okay, these are the birds in order of appearance, kind of like what was previously shown, and it gives a description of what each bird is symbolic of. So yeah, so the additional educational aspects are, the blue jay. They have symbols of confidence and good luck. And if you ever had jays in your yard and whatnot, they pretty confident. They do pretty much what they want in the yard. The gold crest is a bird of good cheer. This is an event where Molly was crowned honorary Miss Silky. She's not a Silky, and we're going to talk about that a little bit in the future. She's just a regular white hen, if you will. And then she gets an injury, along the way, and so these doves are symbolic of peace and shalom, if you will. Opportunity to shalom is a a word that means a little bit more than peace. I mean, it's a broad word, and it deals with lots of aspects of life. So, and then there's the house sparrow. Again, resilience and good fortune. The red the red-winged blackbird. We have we see those rarely, but they do show up here, and it's always kind of a neat thing when you see a red wing, going across the yard like that, because it's like, wow, that's color. And it's usually late spring, early summer when we start to see those again. And then the goldfinch, happiness and rebirth. This is little E. She's thinking about, oh, when she was younger, she had an injury to her foot, and somebody helped take care of her. And now this little peep has an injury to its foot, and she's helping take care of it. And it's just one of those kind of happy moments, in the book. Um, and it's a good scene. It's got the pony and the tractor and the barn and all that. It's typical farm type environment. So yeah, this is good. This is good educational aspect of these scenes. So they start out like I say, the stages of growth. They start out as little peeps, you know, and the hummingbird. If you got hummingbirds, which we got hummingbirds, they're like they're just everywhere, and they're hitting on the mimosa trees and the red blossoms and whatnot, and they got lots of vitality. And that's why we associated them with the peeps, because when the peeps first show up, they're pretty energetic. They're going at it. They're doing all types of things. And then they begin to grow. And before you know it, they'll get what they call pin feathers. And that's when they start when they first show up, they just kind of like little balls of down, if you will. They're just fuzzy and cute as all get out. But, they're very fragile, so you have to handle them gently, because their bodies are small and little, and squeezing on them is not a good thing. But as they get bigger, they begin to develop pin feathers, and so we put the Western tanager in here because it's joy and creativity, and so it's part of God's creation, and they do bring joy to us. We do love to go out and tend to our peeps and whatnot, because it's just a refreshing. You've heard the term spring chicken. Well, they're just so full of energy and full of life. It's just it brings joy to the soul. And then the chickadee. As they go along, they get bigger, and you have to move them out of their brooder environment. Because it just gets too crowded, and so they're bigger. But when you put them in a kind of, we have like a staging area, a kennel, if you will, before they actually move to the actual coop and the barnyard and that kind of thing. But they're very curious, and it doesn't take them long to get used to their new environment. And they get so used to the kennel that a lot of times they don't want to leave. We got ones that, we move them to the coop and they come back, and so there's a few that just, they don't want to leave that kennel. They really like it there. Uh, and so they're probably not as curious as the others, but in general, they're very curious and they're adaptable, and they get used to their new environment and they figure it out pretty quickly. And so this particular one is, it's already a couple of months along, April, May, June, so it's growing. And, that's the one thing. It's kind of like the seasons. This chicken, this fledgling, if you will, no longer resembles what it was before. That time is come and gone, and it's getting its feathers and it's growing, and that's life, right? That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to grow and move on, and that's why I say enjoy the present, enjoy the time you're in, because you're growing, you're changing, and one day your life will be different than it is now. So enjoy what you have. And so then, as time passes, we're into August, and we picked these dates because they were, dates that different people we knew had birthdays at these times and whatnot. So we just picked. You could have picked any dates really, but the span of time is pretty consistent. And after about 4 months, you got yourself a pretty good sized chicken on your hands. And so at that point, it's time to start thinking about, okay, what coop do we want to move them to? We have 3 or 4 different areas that we have chickens in. On the farm here we got probably 400 or 500 chickens. There's a lot of chickens. But they're free range. They get, you've seen some of our videos. They get to move around. They go different places. We don't coop them up and put them in a cage and just, that's what our chickens, a lot of our chickens live to be very, very old. And then, but, predators come along. Occasionally something, owl or something swoop up out of the sky, and that's the end of that one. Or, it's sad to see, but that's part of the cycle of life, And so predators are a real event, and that's why, at night, the lesson to take away from that is, coop your children up at night. You don't let them go out, because that's when the predators come out. Predators are sleeping all day, resting, waiting for the sun to go down, and when it does, they're looking for a meal. They're looking for an opportunity, and you don't want that to happen to you. So yeah, that's the lesson. That's the farm lesson, if you will, from that. There's a lot to learn on the farm, and this particular experience is you get to see the full cycle, from beginning to end, and everything in between. And like I say, Molly, she sustains an injury, right? So the different types of chickens. Okay, I mean, in this particular book, there's silkies, but Molly, she's just a normal hen, and the peeps that were ordered in the beginning of this story was an assortment. But you can order 'em, different types. They have different packages: brown egg layers, white egg layers. There's Cornish hens, there's meat chickens, there's all kinds of chickens. Depending on what it is you're after. But this particular one was an assortment, and had some silkies in it, and some other Jubilee type hens, and golden buff Orpington chickens, and Molly's just a normal white hen that you would associate like what's on a cornflakes box or something like that, right? She's just a white hen. But eggs come in all kinds of sizes, and so most of our eggs are brown eggs. But we have people who they won't eat a brown egg; they only eat white eggs, and okay, whatever. But there's not really well, I think brown eggs are better than white eggs, but there's not really much difference between one egg and another egg other than the size. And as you can see, I washed eggs last night. And we got new hens that we bought in the spring and summer, and they're just starting to lay. And the egg on the left over there is what's called a peewee, and that's how they start out. They start out little bitty eggs like that, and then you'll go to the next egg there in line. It's a medium size eggs. There's not a lot of market for medium and peewees. I mean, I don't even know if I don't think you can sell peewees, so we just basically eat them. But yeah, we do have customers who want medium. And so we set aside mediums, and at this time of year when all the new hens are beginning to lay, we got loads of mediums. But as the time goes by, they become um, larger. And so you go to large, extra large, and then jumbo. And then occasionally we get these things called super jumbos, and they're the huge eggs. They're 100 plus grams, and they got double yolks. And I think we've had a bunch of double yolk type eggs, but I think we've only had one triple in the whole 15, 20 years we've been doing this. That I'm aware of. Now it could be that there were others, and someone just didn't say anything, but that's a big egg. That's when you get a super jumbo, that's a big egg. And then the other aspect about eggs, if you will, is they I, not only do they come in different sizes, but it's the nutritional value of an egg that's like a free range hen is significantly different than the egg nutritional value of the egg that you may see commercially. So that's just another thing you can go look that up. But that's a good lesson point if you're teaching homeschooling, if you're or otherwise teaching your child about eggs. And eggs are protein packed, and they're clean. They're healthy. They're good for you, in spite of whatever. When I went to see my doctor, she said, I don't know, HDL, LDL, whatever. I don't keep up with any of that kind of stuff. But she said, "Oh, this number's a little high." I said, "Well, I'll just eat more eggs." And she's like, "Oh, okay," because the eggs have good cholesterol. and they lower your cholesterol. So they help bring, good cholesterol you want more of, and bad cholesterol you want less of. And so beats, I mean, I do what your doctor tells you, but my thing is I'm a K2, D3 kind of guy, and B12 and C and supplements, and if I can fix it in my diet, that's what I'm going to do. And so eggs are a good thing for your diet. And so, every other um, day or so, I have 3 eggs, And so, if you want to eat eggs every day, that's fine. But that's a good thing to, you can talk about the diet aspect of eggs and whatnot. Um, the, which is important. I mean, and so you never know when you're speaking with your children or whatever, what's the subject that's going to be of interest? Dietitians have to come from somewhere. People who tend to animals who are injured, vets, they got to come from somewhere. People who are into, biology and the study of nature, they got, something gets their interest initially. And so this book, like I say, covers a lot of different topics. But the moral of the story is, God heals. And so we're going to get to that here shortly. Okay, so just hang in there. So the moral of the story. Okay, so I like this guy. I read a lot of his things, and whatnot. But progress is not achieved by luck or accident. Okay, it really isn't. I mean, now, time is going to go by whether you do choose to do anything or not, and some of the things that may happen to you, well, okay. But progress, you got to work on yourself daily. Okay, so it's achieved by working on yourself daily, and that's something that you can do. And you can also do it with, Jesus, with Yeshua, with his help. He can help you. And so flip the page on that. And, I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me. And that's old King James version. Strengtheneth is basically the word for strengthen. And, um, so the bluebird shows up here, and this is where uh, Molly, she's got one leg, and she encounters another chicken that only has 2 toes. Chickens have 3 toes, if you got one that has 2 toes, something's happening. This particular chicken lost a toe, and these were, Tammy Two Toe. That's what we named her. She lived here on the farm. And so, she lost a toe somehow. We're still not sure how that happened, but somehow she lost one. And so, but they make the best of it. That's the thing. Chickens, they don't really go, oh, woe is me, I'm whatever. And they have a positive attitude and whatnot. And so this is where, little E, she's out riding on her Shetland pony, and these Silkies and the other chickens are out in the yard out there, and Tammy and Molly meet each other for the first time. I put the push mower with the grass catcher in there because that's what I do. For me, push mower is my friend. I can think about my books, I can think about God, I can pray, and I can work up a really good sweat. And it's good exercise. And so, what do I do with all those grass clippings? I feed them to the chickens. And so, we kind of call that chicken salad. I know other people have another word for chicken salad, but I call it chicken salad. And so they love the greens. And chickens, they jump right in on there. They see me coming, and I'm their best friend. They know exactly what's going on. They've learned. Now the new ones, they have to learn, a whole new, routine or whatever. But they get used to me bringing them chicken salad, and it makes good eggs. All of that green nutrient and stuff goes into there, and they digest it, and they make good green eggs, or not green eggs, green eggs and ham. That's what I got on my mind. They can make good eggs eating green materials and stuff. And so I don't know, your factory chicken probably never sees grass. Okay, never sees any of that kind of thing. So, yeah, in a way, I want you to support, not that it helps me any, but I think you should support your local farmer. I think you should, if possible, and you may pay a little bit more. Inflation is, everybody's experiencing that now, And when we first started, you could get, chicken feed, grain and that kind of stuff, $3. Now it's, 20. So type prices have really gone up, and especially anything grain related, and farmers have to pass that along. So that's another aspect of homeschooling. You can talk about the economics of farming, and you have to make it somehow affordable. And and don't get me wrong, we sell our eggs at a decent price, but it's marginal. It's not like you're not going to get rich. Unless, of course, you get yourself one of those huge operations, and then, well, it's just, chickens in a house and interesting event. So anyway, but yeah, support your local farmer. Help them out. And so, but yeah, these two chickens finally meet, and the bluebirds are here, like I say, because it's a fresh start. It's happiness, and we have eastern bluebirds, and in the yard I have my favorites, and I really like the eastern bluebird, and so in the nest book that we're writing, the Jemima Joke fall on, they're basically the focal point. But I love cardinals and the yellow finches and whatnot. They're beautiful birds too, and it's not to take anything away. And at the end of the year when the leaves fall off, you go out there and you can see where all the nests were. There were nests out in our yard this year that I didn't even know were there. And now the leaves have fallen off and there's the nest. And I'm like, there was, all this time there was babies up in there and mamas and daddies and they were very well camouflaged. And like I say, in bird world, camouflage is a good thing because there's lots of predators out there. So, because and this is interesting, uh, I've taken care of my share of chickens. Okay, I've mended this and that and treated wounds and different kinds of things like that. And if you do that, be prepared to have a devoted friend for the rest of your life because they imprint on you. And they go, oh, this is someone who cares about me, and after that, there are hens in our flock that they come to me when they see me coming. And then the other ones, they just kind of ignore me. They're like, oh, okay, it's that guy again. But yeah, that's another aspect of chicken experience. I think all of this type of thing is good for kids. I think from the beginning, setting up the brooder, all the things it takes, waterers, feeders, heat lamps to keep them warm, the watching them grow, tending to them, helping them with their wounds, giving them the nutrients, the electrolytes and stuff to begin with, and chick starter is essential uh, food for early development, and then you transition them to regular feed, and then help them get better environment. All this is all good stuff, and it's a great. You can take the pattern that's associated with chickens. I know this maybe not a subject you're interested in, but and you can apply it to life. I mean, you can apply it to just about anything, any project you have. You got to have planning. You got to give it the right environment. You got to nurture it. You got to tend to it. You got to be there. You got to be willing to do things that other people may not be willing to do. I've had hens that, like I say, lost an eye or something. I don't know how. Something stuck them in the eye, or they got pecked in the eye or something, and they're one-eyed. And they adapt to that. They position themselves so that they always have that turn a blind eye, if you will. That eye is always away from the action. That way they don't get sideswiped or surprised or anything of that nature. And so, but yeah, had a lot of one-eyed hens here and different ones, and so it's just a good experience, I think, for your children to have to to bring peeps onto the farm as peeps, watch them grow up, and then watch those moms eventually go broody themselves and have their own offspring. The a mom, a chicken, and then the Bible talks about how I would have loved to gather you like a mother hen does under her wing. These mothers, they do that. That y'all, they take those little peeps and they put them under their wing and they keep them warm and they protect them. And I don't know, in chicken world, it's an interesting place, but the ones that are born like that come in through their with their mom, they never really leave their mother. Their mother's always close by, and they never really leave one another. As far as, if you have two or three, and they, like I say, they imprint on one another, and they stick together through life. And so it's a really a great way to teach family. That families stick together. Families work together. Families do things together. And um, now in chicken world, I don't know really how it works, but sometimes events happen. Hens get old, and they pass away or whatever. The other hens, I don't. They may notice that for a while, but they don't notice it for long. And so they don't get depressed about it. They realize this is part of what it is, and they move on. And that's what we need to do. We just, I mean, it's okay, but you gotta continue living life. And Molly's an example of that. She eventually overcomes all of the challenges that she has. She gets her own little nesting box here. All her little bird friends are there with her. All the birds that you've seen through the book are there. I think it's a wonderful scene, okay, and illustration. And it's, Molly's an overcomer, okay? So, it's a good read from that perspective. So we finally got here. We got to the summary, and so in summary, this book covers a lot of educational aspects, a lot of spiritual aspects, a lot of physical aspects, and so but Molly, she perseveres through it all. She demonstrates the will to overcome her circumstances. She doesn't let it hold her back. And like I say, y'all, Molly was a real chicken. She lived here on the farm, and she lived a good life. This was a long time ago this happened, and we thought it was a good story to write. But yeah, she lived as much of a chicken life as she could live. And yeah, we had to, like, segregate her somewhat from the others because they exploit any weakness. And if you're dealing with someone with disabilities or whatever, you want to make sure that they're in the right environment, okay? But she rose above everything. She actually, grew into a full-fledged chicken, was able to fly. Her landings weren't all that good because she didn't have two legs, but she got where she could hop around on one leg and do things and fly about and, eat grass and be a chicken just like anybody else. And, I think this book will be a good encouragement for someone who potentially may be facing some kind of challenge like that or some kind of hardship. A young child or, young adult even, or maybe you as a parent, you may have faced some of these and challenges in your life, and you could learn something from it. I don't know. I know that in my life I've had, I wear glasses. I'm not, so I have a kind of a disability, if you will. My vision isn't what it used to be, and I've just learned to deal with it and learned to manage with it. And I mean, I know that's a small thing compared to some of the disabilities a person could have, but it's a disability nonetheless. It's so much of a disability that if I get pulled over, it actually says on my driver's license, corrective lenses required. And so if I'm not wearing them, they're going to explain that to me through additional pain and suffering. But anyway, I think it's a good book for that, for that type of reason. This is our contact information. If you enjoyed what you're seeing and what you're hearing, don't hesitate to send us an email or whatever, way you want to contact. And thank you for joining us today, and thank you for being here. And we really, it we enjoy writing these books, and if you like this kind of subject, we can write books on donkeys and goats and in addition to chickens, we've had turkeys and guinea fowl and all kinds of other types of birds and stuff. So, it's a good life experience. As maybe like I say, as a homeschooler, if you live in an area that's more rural, you can actually do something like this. And so, but if not, you can always sell your property in the city and move into the country. Now, that's a challenge too. That's a kind of a different way of life and different thought process too. So, anyway, y'all take care and thank you very much for being here today.